So imagine this, a journey that literally slices right through the Himalayas, linking a busy city to a sacred temple that's tucked high up in the mountains. Today, we're digging into Nepal's most ambitious infrastructure project ever, a real sky-high gamble that could change everything for the nation. Okay, let's just jump right in. The very first thing you need to get your head around is the unbelievable scale of this thing. We are talking about an 81-kilometer-long cable car. To put that into perspective, it would be, by far, the longest cable car system anywhere in the world. And the price tag for this dream? A cool $533 million. Yeah, this isn't just some engineering challenge, it's a massive financial bet that carries enormous weight for Nepal's entire economy. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Is this project a truly revolutionary link that promises a new era of prosperity? Or is it a disaster just waiting to happen, loaded with risks we can't even imagine? Let's break it all down. To really understand what's on the line here, we have to start with the vision itself. So let's begin with just the mind-boggling ambition of building the world's longest cable car. So what is this thing, really? Well, at its core, it's an 81-kilometer aerial tramway. Its job is to connect the tourist hotspot of Pokhara with the secret Mukinath temple. But the real kicker is the terrain. It has to climb through the Himalayas, reaching altitudes of almost 3,700 meters. I mean, the engineering ambition here is just staggering. Think about it. 776 individual gondolas, 20 different stations along the way. The system has to climb from 1,000 meters all the way up to 3,700 meters. And it cuts right through the protected Annapurna Conservation Area. On top of all that, it's Nepal's first major project using what's called an EPCF model. That stands for engineering, procurement, construction, and financing. It's a whole new way of doing public-private projects for the country. Okay, so when you're talking about a project this huge, you've got to ask, why? What's the promise here? Well, that brings us to the whole economic argument. Could this really be a path to prosperity? The biggest, number one selling point all comes down to time. Right now, if you want to get to Mukinath, you're looking at a punishing 7 to 8 hour drive. This cable car? It would slash that journey down to just 2 to 3 hours. That is an absolute game changer for both tourists and pilgrims. But the potential upsides go way beyond just saving a few hours. The big hope is to seriously supercharge tourism. I mean, the Mustang District already saw over 427,000 visitors last year alone. The project promises to create thousands of jobs, directly and indirectly. And this is so important. It would finally make the sacred site accessible for elderly and disabled pilgrims who just can't handle that brutal journey right now. It could even be a lifeline for emergencies in remote areas and maybe even fund cultural preservation. You can see why the case is so compelling. But with any dream this big, there's always a flip side, a shadow. And that brings us to the risks, the part we're calling high stakes, high altitude. And it makes you wonder, what does it really take to build a dream like this in one of the most challenging, most fragile, and most sacred places on Earth? This, right here, is where the gamble truly begins. First up, the environmental cost. This is a big one. The proposed route carves right through incredibly fragile Himalayan ecosystems, including the protected Annapurna Conservation Area. We're talking about the very real possibility of clearing thousands of trees, including Nepal's national flower, the endangered rhododendron. An action like that could sever vital wildlife corridors and just wreak havoc on the region's biodiversity. And then there's the human cost. There's this deep fear of over-commercializing a place that is profoundly sacred. Whole communities could be displaced. The traditional livelihoods of porters and guides, they could be wiped out overnight. And here's a number that really jumps out. The current plan offers only 2% equity for the local communities whose lives will be turned upside down. You have to ask, is that fair? And finally, you've got the stuff that keeps engineers up at night. This whole area is a highly active seismic zone. We all remember the horror of the 2015 earthquake. It faces every kind of extreme weather you can imagine, from monsoons to high winds to avalanches. And here's the clincher. Nepal doesn't have an independent safety regulator for cable cars. We've already seen safety problems on existing, much shorter systems. How on earth do you manage that risk across 81 kilometers? Look, we're not just talking hypotheticals here. These risks are very real. In fact, a recent failure of a similar project serves as a powerful cautionary tale. There's this one quote from the research that it says everything. the violent protests, legal challenges, and eventual suspension of the Pokhara project serve as a stark warning. That project is a very recent ghost that haunts this new proposal. And when you look at the comparison, the parallels are just uncanny, impossible to ignore. Both projects are at a sacred site in a critical, biodiverse area. Both threaten to upend local economies. The Pokhara project blew up into violent protests and legal battles. Now the Mukinath project has been approved, but you have to wonder if it's headed for the exact same fate. And when things went bad for Pokhara, they went bad fast. In early 2025, violent clashes broke out between indigenous Limbu protesters and the police. By the end of January, things had escalated, with injuries and arrests. And then, just a couple months later, on March 30th, Nepal's Supreme Court stepped in and shut the whole thing down. It's a crystal clear example of what happens when these kinds of concerns are brushed aside. So, with all that baggage, all that history, where does that leave the Mukinath project? Well, it brings us to our final section, and to what is really Nepal's ultimate balancing act. You know, the experts who've studied this call the project a litmus test for the entire country. And they're right. This is about so much more than one cable car. It's a test of whether Nepal can balance its powerful driver development with the absolute necessity of sustainability, social justice, and just plain good governance. So, with the stakes this high, is there any way this can actually succeed? Well, maybe, but the path forward is incredibly steep. First, they have to reform the rules and create an independent cable car safety authority. That's non-negotiable. Second, they have to fix the financials, manage the currency risk, and most importantly, guarantee real benefit sharing for the community, like 5–10% of revenue, not just a tiny slice of equity. And finally, technical excellence. Partnering with world-class experts is a must, but so is building up the local skills to actually run and maintain this thing for decades to come. So in the end, we're left with this one massive question. Will this unbelievable project lift Nepal to new heights and become a model for the world? Or will it become a cautionary tale, proving that some dreams, in some of the world's most sacred places, are just too big to build?